If you live in America or in other parts of the world, you almost certainly have noticed that inflation is the highest that it's been in a generation, and constantly rising higher. This video will help explain the exact cause of inflation, and more importantly, how to help you mitigate the effects of inflation to some degree. This is a complicated subject, with many variables and aspects, but it can be explained so that a non-economist can understand it. Many politicians will blame inflation on COVID or supply problems at the ports or on Vladimir Putin. Don't be fooled. Imagine that you went to a doctor and said, "Doc, I've got a stuffy nose, a mild headache, and I keep sneezing." So the doctor runs some tests on you and says, "Yep, because of your stuffy nose, headache, and sneezing, you've caught a cold." Wait, what? The doctor is confusing the symptoms with the source. The source is the cold. The symptoms are the stuffy nose, headache, and sneezing. You don't catch a cold from a runny nose or a headache. That's your body's way of dealing with it. The same thing goes for empty shelves at the grocery store. That is a symptom of a high money supply, not the cause. Inflation is always a fall in the value of money. In other words, you can buy less goods than before. When we say money, we are talking about fiat currency. That is, currency that is not backed by precious metals like gold and silver. Another example of false reasoning goes like this. You walk outside with a friend and you see it's raining. Your friend yells, "Hey, puddles on the ground make the clouds rain." You tell him to stop taking drugs. The puddles are there because of the rain. The rain started first, not the puddles. It may be true that there are always puddles when it rains, but that's not important. Rain causes puddles, not the other way around. The United States Federal Reserve increases the money supply in the U.S. economy, which eventually causes inflation in that economy. It just creates it out of thin air. Here's an easy way to understand this. Imagine that every year, all United States citizens produce 100 goods. Next, imagine that there is $100 total in the economy and everything is priced evenly, just for the sake of the example. If the Federal Reserve increases the money supply by 10%, there'll be $110 in the economy, chasing 100 goods. This means that eventually, prices will rise 10%. What used to cost $1 will cost $1.10. The reason that I say eventually is because the effects usually have a long lag time. People may save the money, or hide it in their mattress, or the economy may produce 103 goods, a 3% increase in productivity, which may shave the inflation down to 7%. There are many variables, like imports, exports, more inflation in one area of the country and less in another, etc. One thing is certain, is that eventually all the chickens will come home to roost and the value of the dollars you hold will be worth less and buy less. What's worse is that eventually people will start expecting inflation and prices will go up on their own, even with no extra money in the economy. Next, we'll find out how to mitigate these effects, and lastly, we'll explore why the Federal Reserve is doing this. I want you to pick up something around you, like a pen, and then hold $1 in your other hand. Imagine that this pen cost $1 when you bought it. The pen is real. Sure, after it's used its ink, it's pretty much worthless, but it has a current value. That dollar has only the value that you and I and everyone else gives it. If it were backed by gold, like in the past, it'd be a different story. The point is that the pen you hold, you own it. It's real. The dollar is just a promise, an IOU you could say, to buy something, maybe. When you own stocks, you own something real. You have a title or a claim to something that is real. For example, if you buy shares in Royal Dutch Shell stock, which pays a dividend, then you have something real that other people want. It also really pays out a small percentage of money to you, just for holding the shares. If you buy land, you hold a title to the land. As long as you pay the taxes, the land will roughly keep its value, no matter how bad inflation gets. Utility stocks are really stable during all times, so they are a really good buy as long as you get them for the right price. Even if the Federal Reserve pumped out 100 times the money we have now, it would still be wise to hold Royal Dutch Shell stock because it is not denominated in dollars and is still the same stock, regardless of inflation. Gold, silver, and precious metals are good to own too, but no one should have more than 10% of their portfolio in them. One of the lessons learned from the 1970s is that real estate does well in bad inflationary times. However, you should never buy in times like this where the prices are soaring. If you already own a house, then it would be wise to keep it as long as you can. It will keep its value. So what if you don't have enough money for the stock market or for gold? Well, you can go out and buy extra clothes for next year and the year after. You can keep an extra month of food around the house, especially canned food that has a long shelf life. This will hedge inflation to some degree. When you have a food can in your hand, you have something real, with real value. If you can afford it, it would be a good time to buy a new car, if you can get it. It will be cheaper now than after 3 years of raging inflation. So, why is all this inflation happening? The answer is complicated, but to put it simply, when we elect our congressional representatives, we tell them two contradictory things. Number one, give me all the federal money that you can to my state. Number two, don't raise my taxes. As long as Congress does both of these, they pretty much get reelected. So Congress says, sure, we'll get that federal highway grant to you. You don't know where the money is coming from, and you don't care. It's free money, but wait, is it free? No, it's not. Congress borrows the money, and the Federal Reserve prints the money. Now, in years past, Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke said that they weren't going to monetize the debt, which means not pay it back, but to put it in the economy, causing inflation. But that ended up being a lie, because the Fed has been monetizing the debt for years now and will probably continue to do so as long as it can. After so many decades of deficit spending, the national debt is beyond enormous and is financed with extremely low interest rates. The real reason the Federal Reserve won't bring inflation under control is because although they have the tools to do it, they won't, because the interest on the federal debt would skyrocket and bankrupt the U.S. government. So the Federal Reserve is pretending they will fight it when they will do very little. To give a final illustration, imagine you walk up on a blazing house fire and a fireman has a tiny squirt gun squirting the flames. You are amazed and ask him what he's doing. I'm putting out the fire. You ask, why don't you use a big hose? He replies, hey, that hose is heavy. Anyway, he's doing something rather than nothing, and hey, this is working. Although the house will burn down if he doesn't grab a hose. Although interest rates shouldn't be set by the federal government or a central bank, unfortunately that is the way we have it now. Small quarter-point increases are like that little squirt gun against a massive inflation fire. I think you get the point. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope it helps you push that inflation bug away to some degree.